Hi everybody, we're back. We're into, I believe this is part 2 or 3 of the board build. Sorry, can't remember the numbers. For the Deluxe Reverb Mojotone kit. If you noticed in the first or second videos, I got the components placed on the board and everything ready to go to get wired up. And once we have everything placed where it needs to be, according to the wiring diagram, we want to make sure nothing's going to fall out when we start rotating the board around. So if you notice, the back side of this has got all the leads bent over, and it looks like a big porcupine right now, but that's going to change. What I like to do is, again, like I said, my other build videos, a good practice is to start at one point on everything you build. Start at one point and move over. And from here, I started from the left, of course, and went to the right. But I did the things behind the board first. Not all of them. I just got the bottom done and some of the 3 wires here and the bias supply here. But you can see under the board, this is going to be one of these things you really need to pay attention to, because once this board is in place, it is a pain to get back out or to modify. Of course, it can be done. Certainly, not that hard, but you want to keep. You don't want to backstep when you start to get this thing in the actual chassis itself. So what I did was, again, I started from the left, moved to the right, working on everything under the board. If you notice on our wiring diagram, a lot of these dotted lines here, you'll notice there's some underboard stuff that terminates through a hole here. The dotted lines, of course, are hidden, so that goes behind the board and it terminates through this hole to the top, which you'll see, I believe it's right here. So it comes through the hole there. Alright. And wherever possible, like here, that there's no wires going through the tubes here, I like to go ahead and solder these things in place so I can keep things rigid. The more you solder on this board, the more rigid it gets, which is good. That's what you want. You want a nice solid structure when this is all done, because right now it's kind of very rattly because everything's moving around on there. Okay. But be very methodical when you do this, because again, it's a pain when you forget something or you have one wire that happens to be off, because of course I take all the tech calls there, a good majority of them. Of course, John Manning and Steve Snyder do a lot of this too, but a good portion of what I see are that people start working on these things and they get 2 hours into it and they start putting these wires in. And then they realize, oh, well, this wire here for Y was actually, accidentally soldered here. And, you can't see that when the board's in the actual chassis. Of course, you'll pick it up in the test procedure. But, it's just one of those things, okay, you have to stop and then go back and move the wire over. But, what I like to do is get the wires in place, take my time. This part of the build takes the longest time. And that's for any build that has a central fiber board or turret board. You always want to make sure 200% correct before before it goes into the actual chassis. And the way to do that is I'll get this done, and this is about a little over an hour and a half evolution just to do this, and I'll set it aside and I'll do something else. I'll do the windings or the some of the wiring in the chassis and come back to this, because I always like to look at this with fresh eyes 2 or 3 times before it goes in. And 99% of the time, I'll find my mistakes by doing that. So that's a good, and again, if take your time. I can't emphasize that enough. Take your time doing these boards, because this is the problem child. This is the problem that this is the area that, because of the complexity of this amp, when you do this amp, even the Princeton Reverb, when you start going up in the Princeton Reverb, Deluxe Reverb, Super Reverb, Twin Reverb, it exponentially gets a little bit more difficult to exponentially gets more difficult to troubleshoot these boards. And when people send me tech emails like, I got my Twin Reverb together and it doesn't work, I'm getting a weird voltage here, and it's like, well, okay, well, look at this and this, and people say, no, that's right, it's right, I know it's right, I looked at it 3 times, I resoldered it 4 times, I know it's right. Well, it's not right, because there's something wrong. If you're getting, and it has to do with this process of the actual build of the amp itself. Now we're going to be updating. Keep in mind, all our wiring diagrams we're going to be updating. This is an older diagram that certainly suffices. If you've built amps before, this is more than enough information you'll need between this and our schematic we have with it. And it, just like the original Deluxe Reverb, the wiring diagrams, which I think I have right here actually. If you notice, there's no filter cap board mentioned on here. All it shows are the actual leads for the filter cap boards that come out, of the cap pan through the bottom of the chassis. It doesn't actually show you the cap pan. However, on the schematic, it does. So I can look at this and tell you right off the bat, I know that there's five caps on that cap board because they're all right here in your power supply. And this is really, if you get to this level, this is more than enough information you really need. But again, we're redoing this, so it's a little bit more builder friendly to show a lot of the things that happen on the board. Like a lot of people miss that the B and the letter designators on the actual wiring diagram itself. They correspond. There's a reason they're there, and they correspond with other things. Even if in some of the other builds that you'll do. You could have a B or a C or a D somewhere that doesn't go anywhere else on the board. But if you look at the wiring diagram, or excuse me, the schematic, you'll notice that, oh yeah, maybe it does. Even though that's not on the C right here. Where's the C? I don't think there's a C on here. But this is I look at this a lot when building amps because this is kind of like a GPS. It shows you the roads and everything and where you need to go, and this shows you what the roads are actually leading to and what's happening. So if there's any question with this, you'll be able to look at this and be able to figure the problems out in a matter of seconds, really. And I think that's why Fender, for the service techs, why they did their actual wiring diagrams like they did, was because once you've built one of these amps, it's pretty self-explanatory where everything comes from because they color-coded everything. So yeah, all right. So at this point, what I'm going to do is, sorry for the mess here, I got leads all over the place. What I'm going to do is I'm going to finish the underboard wiring, of course, for the top, for the control, the tone controls, input jacks, part of the reverb, tremolo circuit, and power supply coming in. I'll finish that at the top, and then I will actually start adding the leads to the front for the tubes here, the short leads that come out right off the board at the top. Fender always did, these leads coming off at the top, and there's a reason they did that, was because it's really easy to see. Now, some builders, for the sake of it looking really cool, will put the leads underneath. If you're not absolutely positively 110% sure of your wiring, I don't recommend you do that, because if you get to a point to where there's something you can't figure out, say a twin reverb, and you can't figure something out, and you have these leads soldered underneath, there is no hope that any tech is going to be able to help you, because even if you send 1,000 pictures of that board, they cannot see what is going on behind this board. They can't see that this wire is going to this eyelet. So that's why Fender did that. Of course, it looks cool with underneath, it looks really clean, but again, serviceability, it's a nightmare. I would not recommend you do that. Yeah, so that's one thing there, and that goes along with good build principles, not only with fiber boards, but our Marshall or British style rather turret boards. Same thing. People will put the wiring up under the board into the hole of the turret and solder it from the top, so it looks really clean. You don't see any wires going to the board, they're all going underneath. But again, you can't tell, something happens with that 10 years down the road, and you're trying to troubleshoot the thing, and then all of a sudden you're cursing yourself, wondering why you did that. Because what could be potentially a 3 to 5 minute job automatically turns into a 45 minute to an hour job, because you're having to trace the continuity of everything on the board to make sure everything's good, because you can't physically see it. And again, that goes back to good build principles, the 101, I guess you would say. So, all right. So again, I'm going to be adding the rest of the leads to this. I'll come back when I have the underboard leads to the top we have here, and you'll start to see that the board starts to get a little bit more organized behind here, because as I add the leads to the actual board itself. I'll be trimming the the leads off of the actual components itself after it's soldered in place. Okay. All right, hang in there. I'll be right back.